Should you buy Tempest Citadel? That's what we're going to answer here today on AP Games Reviews. For those of you that are new to the channel, just want to say thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoy your stay. And I also want to say thank you to Aartform Games. Aartform with 2 A's. Thank you guys so much for the free key. I've really enjoyed my time with this game review and playing Tempest Citadel. And thanks so much. For those of you that are new, my game review takes place kind of is structured like this. So first of all, we're going to describe the game, just give a general overview of what it's about, what you can expect. Then we'll go into gameplay. What do you actually do? What are the tasks that you perform? How do you play? How do you engage? And then we wrap up with what makes it fun and what makes it challenging. What's the challenge that you have to overcome within the game? And then we wrap up with my rating, my summary, and any recommendations to the gamer, and sometimes any suggestions to the developer as well. So let's go ahead and get into the review, starting with the description. So, Tempest Citadel, it's a base building and squad management game set in the future as mankind begins to explore the stars. So, your squad is sent into space to try and find out more about some strange aliens that you learned about here on Earth, and things go awry as soon as you arrive. Right? That's kind of the basis of every like space stories. Like, we're gonna go exploring. Things went wrong. There are aliens trying to kill us, and we need to overcome them. And that's basically what we've got here for Tempest Citadel. Just not saying that it's bad. It's just kind of like this general overarching like every space exploration game ever. So the game takes place as your squad struggles to learn the lay of the land. They struggle to solve a lot of the mysteries on how does this planet actually like operate. There's a lot of like weird weather mechanics and just like how things operate. They got to figure that out. And there's a lot of mysteries on the new planet and its inhabitants that you need to solve out as well. You have to make some difficult decisions. You have to do a bunch of research. And of course, as a base building game, you have to build your base. You have to decide which kind of components to build. You have to decide which buildings to put in place, where you want to put them, and you have to manage your personnel. These things are all paramount, as is conflict and combat. You have to manage those and how you manage your personnel as well. So gameplay is, honestly, it's broken into a pretty simple loop. And that loop is preparation, combat, scavenging afterwards, base building, researching, and crafting, and then repeat. So you kind of do the cycle of prepping for combat, going to combat, scavenging what you can from the enemy base, going back to your base and building it up, doing some research. Maybe there might be some waiting in there. You kind of have to wait for some research to complete or some crafting to finish up, and then you go through the cycle all over again. There's a little bit of story sprinkled in throughout. It's kind of in there to give you some motivations and give you an understanding of why we're going to this place and why we're attacking these people and why are these people friendly with us for some reason. The story's kind of thin overall, but the gameplay is still there. Preparation. So the preparation part, you kind of scout out your next fight. You can go into this basic scouting tool and it'll tell you what percentage you have a chance of winning and what kind of enemies are there and what kind of weapons they're using so that you can kind of counteract that with the gear that you gear up on your troops. You want to make sure that you give your squad the right armor, the right weapons, the right perks and bonuses, even cybernetic upgrades. Once you get to that point, you can upgrade some of you guys with cybernetic components and like robotic limbs and all this, like all that fantasy, like sci-fi stuff. So you want to prep and make sure that that's all ready before combat. Your troops land and you have to order them around in squads, and you can break them up into squads and position them so that they automatically execute their attacks and their abilities as they go throughout. So it's a little bit more of management of placement rather than what they're actually doing. You can set some tactics and general ideas when it comes to combat. So use more ranged weapons, use more like assault weapons and abilities, try not to get hurt, do lots of damage, like what are their priorities. But overall combat is a little bit more automated than in a lot of other games. After combat, if you win, you get to scavenge. It's actually this really fun like base raiding like mini game. So you have to like search the enemy hideout, their bunkers for research, for resources and lore. As you break through locks, you hack computers, you have to dig through cave-ins and like find your way. I really like the scavenging part. I really enjoyed it. It was this fun little puzzle that you had to go through. You fly back and you've got your base building. So obviously you're expanding your docking, you're expanding your housing so you can house more of the people that you brought along with you. You have to build more research centers and engineering areas that enable you to build new gear and research new technologies and build more vehicles and all this sort of stuff. Research, there's a branching research tree, which honestly, in my playthrough, I was not able to cover all of the research throughout the game. It just wasn't possible for me. I don't know if that's just like the rate of research and like RNG that I had from like discovering research, or if that was simply designed that way that you're not able to get through all the research in one playthrough to give it more replayability. I wasn't able to get through all the technologies. I wasn't able to get through all the research. So you have to choose wisely. That determines what abilities, what gears, and what upgrades you can create, and those dictate the game a little bit. So, and finally, of course, you've got crafting. So you make new weapons, make new armor, make new gear, and all that sort of stuff for your team based on your income and based on what you scavenge. It's important to note that crafting takes time. You don't just like say, hey, build me this, this minigun, build me these, 6 new sets of armor or something like that, and then they're just automatically created. They take time to put together. So you have to plan ahead on when you're doing that as well. The challenges for the game. Obviously, as a management game, one of the major challenges is simply just management. It's the main challenge that I found, and it's not combat. So combat is not the main challenge here. It's the actual squad and base management, which I think is important for you guys going in. Don't expect this to be... Obviously, there's plenty of combat, but don't expect this to be like you're fighting like every minute of every hour that you're playing this game. There's a lot of management that takes place in between the actual fights that you have. So first of all, obviously, you have to manage your people. You can have up to 100 people in your base, and that's a lot of people to manage. Characters can die in combat or due to storyline choices or something like that, so you gotta try and take care of your peeps. I ended up having kind of like my main squad, and then a few backup people from my main squad. Just kind of, based on the scenario, maybe there's a combat situation that required people with this type of skill, or were better with this type of weapon or something like that. Or maybe if someone just got injured, I would have a couple backups in place to cycle into my main combat squad. Which is important to note because people get injured a lot. And when I say a lot, it was like to the point where I almost didn't have enough people to fill a squad because there were so many people injured with injuries that prevented them from going into combat. People get injured a lot. So if you get a perk that says so-and-so cannot be injured, put that on them because they will get injured. Research. Obviously, you have to manage your research. Research is a big deal. It's going to dictate what tactics you can use, what abilities you have, what kind of magic and weapons and armor and stuff you can tap into, what kind of companions you can get. So if you can, you got to really prioritize your research and think through what you want to have for your characters, for your squad. I found that I had to kind of go like the traditional like technology route due to a lot of my characters getting injured, and that took them out of combat. I had to go like the traditional technology route so that I could build them fake limbs and build them fake eyes because they got blinded and all this sort of stuff. So you just have to weigh what you need and see what that is on the research. You can also get more like mystical and magic-y and like that sort of stuff on the tech tree, which again, I wasn't able to research as much, but it looked pretty interesting. So again, you have to prioritize your research and manage that pretty well. Your resources, obviously, as a management game, one of the challenges is managing your resources. Some resources are pretty abundant and they just come in, pretty automatically on your income. Others, they're difficult. You're gonna have to stretch to get them, and you're gonna have to take what you get and make them stretch throughout your buildings and throughout your gear. As a management game, it's really a priority to use as little as you can for what you need, and then break down anything that you're not actively using, which is a nice feature. You're able to break down any weapons, any armor, anything like that you're not using. You can break it down and get some of the components back, which is really nice. And again, with resources, scavenging is vital, super vital. So always bring an explorer and scavenger on your team so that you have a better chance of scavenging stuff with the explorer, and you get better resources and better rewards with the scavenger. So always bring them on your team if you buy this game. And then finally, you have to manage your buildings. So the buildings, they increase your research, they increase your construction and your crafting. It takes time to produce your orders, so speeding that up is really handy. Buildings also have to be maintained. They wear down over time, so this is what your engineers are for. They maintain your buildings. If you can, just have like a nice solid squad of engineers and just give them all of the perks of just like upgrade faster and better building maintenance and better crafting time, all that sort of stuff. Give them those perks and never put them into combat. Just have your squad of engineers that just keep your buildings maintained. You also have to build aerial defenses. Your base can get attacked by aerial units, and so you want to build some aerial defenses to stave them off as well. Other challenges within the game, you've also got the timeline. There is a pretty specific timeline that the game takes place in. I think it's like 2 or 3 years over which that you have like to do this exploration. There's a time limit. in the game, and falling behind on your combat, falling behind on like story progression means that it kind of puts some pressure on you to try and catch up. Now, there were multiple times that I was behind, but I was able to use that time to research and gear up and build up, and then I was able to kind of like leapfrog ahead. However, it does put some pressure on you on this timeline. It also means that you can't just like indefinitely sit back, gear up, tech up, that sort of thing, and then just upgrade your way until you can steamroll over all of your opponents. You have to actively be out there getting resources, getting research, getting the lore and the abilities, and improving your troops' combat. You can't just sit back and wait and like give everybody a bunch of cybernetic upgrades. You're not going to have the resources to do that, and people are going to be attacking you, and you're going to fall too far behind in order to catch up. So you have to be progressing throughout the game. So that's another challenge there. And obviously combat is a challenge, but not in the way that you might think. The main challenge with combat is knowing the opponent you're facing and prepping ahead of time. So it's more the management part of combat is the challenge, not the actual combat part itself. Again, this is very much a management game, not a combat game. Combat is pretty autonomous. Your purpose is basically to put your squad in the best position possible to win and not get injured. Again, combat pretty autonomous. You can take control of like positioning and basic tactics, but that's about it. Scouting to see enemy weaknesses is probably the most important part of the game, and I honestly wasn't like, I didn't get that much out of it. Like I wasn't really informed enough of it. With that said, the power levels on enemies seem almost completely arbitrary. There were plenty of times when I played the game that I would go into combat and I was way under level, and my squad just wrecked the enemy. They just completely destroyed him. And then there were plenty of times with the opposite. I was like given like a 96% chance to win, and I just got creamed. I got destroyed, and I just don't understand. I don't know. I honestly don't know if the power level numbers mean anything at all, which is really weird. And again, just a reminder that combat is only a portion of the game. It's the management and the prep that's your main job. So I just want to make sure that that's very clear, because I see on like the Steam page and stuff that there's a lot of combat images portrayed, which combat does take up a good portion of the game, but it's not the main portion of the game. So I just want to give you guys proper expectations before going in. That's kind of my description and my gameplay description of the game. How do I rate this game? Where do I rate it? So for those of you that are new for the channel, here's how I do my rating system. If a friend came to me and said, hey, I'm interested in Tempest Citadel, my game review is basically me saying, this is what I would say to a friend about this game. This is how I would recommend it to them. This is what I would say they should or shouldn't do. I rate on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 is being just these games that are groundbreaking. They're absolutely just astronomically great in terms of story, in terms of quality, in terms of gameplay, that sort of thing. So this is like Minecraft or God of War or Skyrim, or like these games that like have just these far-reaching impacts on games and gaming culture. A 4 is a game that's like, it's excellent, it's good. If you're a fan of the genre, you should probably check this game out. A 3 is just an overall solid game. You're gonna have fun. It'll be a good time. Might not be the best game you've ever played, but it'll be a good one. A 2 is a game where it's broken. Not super broken. It's got some bugs. You know, it's not great. But if you're a fan of the TV show, or if you're a fan of the novels or something like that, then sure, maybe check it out, but just, you know, do so with caution. And a game that's a 1 is a game that's just like, this game is broken and you should not buy it under any circumstances whatsoever. So that's my overall rating system. So where do I rate Tempest Citadel? Unfortunately, it's a 2.25. I really want to give this game a higher rating. And I say that because I really enjoyed this game playing it. I played it all the way through. I really enjoyed myself, but it's not great. There's just too much wrong here for me to give a better rating. The power levels in combat is probably the biggest thing that I see as an issue. The combat is like, where do I even begin? So like I said, it's a 2.25 because there's like, if there were some updates and changes to this game would be a lot of fun. Like, it would be great. It would be a really good game. But there's just like fundamental flaws at the core of the game that have to be rectified. Power levels in combat are almost completely arbitrary. Again, me losing when I have a 99% chance of winning, or 100% chance of winning, and I still lose, that should not happen. Those power levels should mean something. The story, it's paper thin. and it's actually incomplete. Like, the storyline is incomplete. So I would get back from combat, and characters would just be like, "Oh my gosh, can you believe that these guys betrayed us and we had to flee?" And I would be like, "But we won that battle. Like, we won. Why did we have to flee?" And they would just like reference these, like, the characters would reference stuff that I was never made aware of. And they would reference things that like conflicted with what actually happened. I would win a battle and then they said that we lost. I would, go to this place and rescue these people, and then they would say all those people were dead. And it's just like, it just doesn't make sense. There's a lot of conflict, like conflicting information. So you got to fix this story. The ending is incredibly not satisfying. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There's almost no context given. It just like cuts off really abruptly, and it's meh. The graphics are kind of meh as well. Combat needs to be a lot more interactive. You can't just be like, walk here, stay there, use your heavy or light weapons, that sort of thing. You gotta give us some more abilities, some more interactivity when it comes to combat. Between combat, you'd basically just make sure that you had research in place, make sure that you put your crafting orders in place, and then you'd fast forward. You'd just hit fast forward until the next event, until your research was done, and then you'd research some more and that sort of thing. There needs to be more interactivity between combat. There needs to be more actual like hands-on management if you're going to call this a management game. This is an unfortunate case of a game that plays itself. And I say that with the caveat that if this were a mobile game, and it was a mobile game where it's like your research is going to take X number of minutes, and you can speed it up by using like X number of like space crystals or something like that, that'd be fine, because that's pretty standard in mobile games. But as a desktop game, it just like, a game that plays itself is not what I want to be doing when I have like dedicated gaming time. There is one shining spot of this game, and that's the scavenging minigame after battles. I actually really like that. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's this nice little puzzle, and the best part of the scavenging game is that you have to go through like locks and like cave-ins and hacking system, but you also had like a timer, and so each time that you attempted to each room you explored took up a little bit of time, and each lock that you picked took up a little bit of time, and each attempt to do those things took up time, and you only had X amount of time in order to complete them. So you had to make decisions on which rooms do I want to prioritize going to, how often, like how many times do I want to try digging through this cave-in, knowing that each time that I do that takes up like 30 minutes of my time. So I really found scavenging to be a fun part of the game. I would play like almost like a scavenging game almost in and of itself. Overall though, I would say that you should just stay away from this until or unless the developers make some serious updates to combat and make the game overall more interactive. So as far as that goes, my suggestions: 1, I would say, like, this game has a lot of people and a lot of stats. I would say just embrace like full grindy. Just go full grindy management. Just go like super deep, like Crusader Kings 2, Hearts of Iron, like Paradox Games, deep grindy management. Just embrace it. And like don't just give us buildings that people work in. Give us like specific workstations that you have to like place people into. And like placing each person in there like gives like benefits to your engineering, into your crafting, into your research. Just go like full grindy. Just embrace it. Either that or just go full mobile. Just make it a mobile game. Make it so like instead of going super grindy, make it full mobile. It's like choose one of those paths and go for it. Improve combat. Make it actually connected to the stats and the power levels that you see. And then fix the dialogue and make your choices matter. I just don't understand how I can win a battle and say that I had to flee. It just doesn't make sense. So those are my suggestions to the developer. I think it's like I said, I had fun playing this game and I want to give it a better rating, but there's just deep fundamental flaws in this game. So hopefully they can get fixed. If not, I would say probably avoid this game. There are better management games out there, better space management games out there, specifically like XCOM 2. XCOM 2 is, I would say, it's probably more than double the price, but it's definitely more than double the value. So that's just how I would say that. So if you have any questions, any concerns, if you want more information, leave a comment down below. If you just want to say hi, leave a comment down below. I really appreciate it. I love hearing from you guys, and hopefully you guys enjoyed yourself here on the channel. Be sure to check out some of my other game reviews as well, and we'll see you again soon here on AP Games.